Welcome everybody to the Rally Cry podcast. I am your host, Angel Reels, and I am so blessed to have your time. The fact that you trust me with your time, if you're cleaning, if you're driving, whatever it may be, I'm just so glad that you're here and I have your ear. And we're really here because it's all about mental health, right? We're all about empowering the community, engagement, and how can we better define ourselves, right? How do we become a little bit better, even if it's 1%? And today we have a very special guest, and I'm so excited to introduce you guys, Ayanna Crawford. How are you doing today?
Woo!
Yeah!
I'm doing well.
I love it.
I'm alive. You know, God has woke me up this morning and I'm just ready to conquer the world.
You see the energy. See, this is what the energy is about. And just before we came on, we were just talking about like centering ourselves, intention, and like that's what this is right here, right? Yes. The intention to talk about, especially like everything that you do in the community, right? I feel like I see you everywhere, and I love seeing your face. You have a great energy, you have a great intention, and I think that matters a lot. And before we even get into more about what you do, because I think there's a lot to cover, I would love to break the ice with you with enough said.
Absolutely.
And so
let's
do it. So
let's do it.
Let's do it. So everybody, if you have not got your enough said icebreaker cards, I feel like I say it so much to a point where like I might get a little mixed up. But as there is a website now. I'm actually in the development of it. And if you want, you can actually check it out. It's called therallycry.com. We got our first domain. That's in the progression right now. And I'm just so excited that we're on up. So I have some cards here. I'm gonna spread them out on my hands. And this is destiny for you.
It is destiny.
So whichever card it picks out, we're gonna start and break the ice. There we go.
Right here. Always the middle, right?
There we go. And what does it say?
What does it say? Ooh, what is your go-to comfort food? Ooh.
Okay.
Wow. I have a lot.
Me too. Enough said, right?
Right, enough said, right? But I think for me, I love fruit.
Okay.
Okay, grapes.
Okay.
OMG.
Seeded though, right?
Yes. Listen, grapes and mango. Like I could just sit in a little corner by myself with nobody bothering me and just eat my grapes and my mango. Like,
I love it.
And I feel so like after I finish, I feel so refreshed. Like I did something good for my body, you know, like my body's all happy now, like, yay.
Yeah. And no, it's a real thing too, right? Like I can totally double down on the mango, right? I love mangoes. Like I can eat mangoes all day, every day. I would say just to see if there's another one that I got. Another thing I love, because I love fruits too.
Yes.
I love dragon fruit.
Ooh.
I love dragon fruit, like the yellow kind. Like I know there's a red one, but like the yellow is a little bit sweeter, and it's almost like it's crispy.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I just like a little crisp to it. I don't know how to. Have you ever had dragon fruit?
I've not, but my son has.
Yeah.
My son is all about exotic fruits.
Okay.
And so he's had them imported from other countries.
Really?
Yes. Yeah. My son is like way out there, and I'm like, "Where did you get this from?" He's like, "Oh, Egypt," or like,
Egypt.
Yeah, my son is like, I don't know how he even gets to know to do this, but yeah.
That is so awesome. Have you ever saw a fruit that he might have had and you're like, what is that?
Yes.
Do you remember what that have been?
I have no idea. I know it was yellow and it had like spikes.
Okay.
Yeah, you know what that is?
I feel like I know what it looks like. I just don't know the name.
Okay.
Yeah. I love it.
So
fruits.
I was like, whoa. So yeah, and then if I think about like food that we like cook, fried chicken.
Fried chicken? You can't go wrong with fried chicken.
Fried chicken, chicken wings with sauce, with buffalo sauce.
Buffalo,
you know,
okay.
That's
ranch,
yes.
We're cultured, okay.
Yes. And so if I had to have cooked food, it would have to have wings, fried chicken. Like, just give me a whole platter. Like I'm good.
Yeah.
You know, a little bit of bread.
A little bit of bread?
A little bit of bread.
Right, a little bit of protein. I know the protein with the protein, right?
Right. I shouldn't be doing that, but it's sort of like a treat. It would be a treat. It would be a treat.
Right. No, I totally agree. And I think as much as we're talking about food, you know, I would even say seafood. Like, I love seafood, right? Like, I don't think there's any limitations to what I can eat for seafood. Like I love shrimp, salmon. Then there's regular fish, of course.
Yep.
Octopus. And there's so many others that.
Oh yeah, I love salmon. I love, so many different ways that you can cook salmon. Oh my
Right?
goodness, right?
Yeah, it's so
Like you
good.
could put it on the grill, you could fry it, you could bake it. Like it is amazing. Like I love salmon too as well. That's
Yeah.
another one. But
Yeah.
fried chicken, no, trumps anything.
Oh, got you. If you put the chicken in front, you're like, I got to.
Got
I
it.
got to.
Yep.
Especially if you go to a new restaurant that might have
Oh.
to be like that staple. I got to try theirs.
You gotta try the chicken.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
always have to try the fried chicken and I think a vegetable.
Okay.
If you're going to a new restaurant.
Right.
Just because you want to make sure you have your greens no matter where you go.
I totally agree.
It's important to do that.
It really is.
Yeah.
And, I hope everybody that's listening is not getting hungry. You know what I mean? Because just a little bit of me is kind of like, damn, I kind of want a little snack right now.
Right.
And I absolutely love it. I think the way that people eat says a lot about who they are and how they carry themselves, right? Like what you mentioned feels like I'm doing something good for my body.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Making it feel happy.
Right. I totally agree.
And healthy.
Yeah.
So.
And, I'm thinking about as, what you do for the inside, I am so appreciative of all the things you've done on the outside. And all the outside work, right? You got to take the mic program and you got a whole bunch of other things. I know we were talking not that long ago.
Yeah.
You're running for school committee.
I am.
Right? Which is great. I want to start from the beginning though, right?
Sure.
Like when you were younger, right? Like
Sure.
maybe let's go back maybe a couple years, right?
Ooh.
And what was that pivotal moment that made you to be who you are today?
That's a great question. I'm going to go back to when I was in high school.
Okay.
I was, I think, 15 or 16. And I was pretty shy. I mean, terribly shy. I didn't talk. I didn't do anything. I just kind of went with the flow. Until one day, I was on the bus, and I guess you could call these folks bullies. I would always do my homework and do what I'm supposed to do. They didn't do their homework, and so they said, give us your homework now because we need to get the answers because we're on the bus, and they were, homework was due that day.
Right.
And so I refused to give it to them, and so they wanted to beat me up, like right after school, like that same day.
Wow.
And so they got off my bus, and they wanted to fight me. And I never fought before in my life, never. And so I stood up for myself, and I took care of business. And from then on, nobody bothered me ever again. And so from there, I got my power, I got my voice, and I started helping other students in my school from bullying, from being disrespected, from people doing whatever that was nonsense, because I felt like, wow, if I conquered a bully that was pretty known in our school, like she did everything she could possible to everybody. But when I stood up to her and I did what I had to do, she didn't bother me anymore. And anytime anybody else had issues with anybody, I was the go-to person to help them.
Wow, that's almost like something that should be in the beginning of a book.
Right, and I didn't realize that that was a thing, nor did I realize what I had done until now.
Right.
I just stood up. I'm not going to be treated like this, and you're not going to continue to ask me for my homework because you didn't do it. I did my homework, and you should do yours too. And they said, well, if you don't give it to me, we're going to, and I stood up to them.
Right.
And then I stood up to others throughout my whole life.
Right.
And it's just been a thing that I've done, but I know it's not what I want to do. Like, I don't want to be in those spaces. So that's why I do so much. And I want to show people who I really am, right? Like, I'm a kind person. I'm a loving person. I want to help everybody. And I don't want to ever find anybody in a situation where they feel like they have to, defend themselves in that way, So I've avoided that at all costs.
Right.
I use my words. I use my words to de-escalate. I use my words to comfort. I use my words to strategize, to work with people that are difficult, to get them to understand, okay, I get it. I know you're frustrated, but let's sit and let's talk about this first, so that they don't explode. So I've been able to do that. And I'm very proud of myself. So I don't ever have to resort to, any type of violence, if you will. And not that I did when I was 16. I want to make this clear.
Right.
Like, I didn't even have to do anything to the person.
Right.
I used my voice. So I meant to say that. So I used my voice. So I didn't have to physically use my hands
Right.
to do anything. I used my voice, and I said to her, I
Wow.
told her who she was, and you need to stop doing this to me and to other people. So I stood up for myself. I
Wow.
used my voice.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And I
Yeah.
think, especially like nowadays, that's something you don't normally see.
No,
A lot
no.
of times people do get physical because people are
Exactly.
becoming physical, and we start to reflect off of what they're doing and portraying, and that we have to do the same, right?
Exactly.
And, I kind of want to go into like maybe how was there any influence around that allowed you to speak up rather than to get physical, right? Because I think nowadays people struggle to how to use our voice, right? Was there something that was behind your head that made you like, oh, let me just speak up? Like, how come you didn't get physical? I think a lot of times in that situation, a lot of people would get physical because they feel like they needed to defend themselves. But in
Right.
that moment, you did so much reflection in that very instant moment. You was like, I'm gonna use my words and I'm gonna speak up.
That's a great question. The only thing I can think of is my mother, my father, my aunts, my uncles, encouraging me to always use my voice or to speak up. Um, I remember being in a Saturday reading group in my neighborhood with a teacher that would just, I would always be shy. I would never want to speak up. I would never want to read. I would never want to do that. And she would say, we're not going to move on until we hear from you. So there was a lot of like pressure to use my voice and to speak. I didn't want to, but I was sort of forced, as a young child growing up. And so I think that's where I was able to build my capacity or to build my voice up because I was instructed to do that. And then hearing my mother and my father speak to me and how they spoke to me, there was never anything physical. There was never any of that. Like, I didn't come from an abusive family. I didn't come from an abusive household. They spoke to me. They told me what they needed. They told me when I was wrong, how I needed to correct myself, and what I needed to do. And so because they did that, I guess I modeled that behavior when I was in front of the bully
Right.
because that's what my parents showed me.
Right. And, I love that you mentioned that because, a reflection of what you see on the outside does a lot what you do on the inside, right? Like how you reflect on yourself
Right.
in a certain situation in where you looked at it and like, okay, this is a problem and this is the best way that I'm going to solve it because those were your values and you have boundaries, right? Especially like I think around 16 and 17 years old, that's a lot, right? I think to be able to stop a situation
Yeah.
and solve a situation without ever getting physical is a very big award, right? For yourself because you can look at yourself and be like, wow, I really was able to do this. And I would say, when it comes to people that, probably have a background that can be maybe abusive with words, right? I think
Yes.
nowadays people can't be articulate enough to know how to address something that they're feeling.
Right.
What would you say is one thing people can start doing, even if it's a mindset that they tell themselves, if it's something they do physically, right? Maybe in the mirror, something I say. What would be that thing people can start doing in order to stand up for themselves?
I think that's a great question. I think, you have to hone in on your power, right? Where's your comfortable spot? Where do you feel that you have the most confidence? Is it with your peer groups? Is it with your family? Who makes you feel empowered? And once you sort of think about those groups of people, then you can feel that power in you so that you can stand up to anybody.
Right.
So, for instance, for me, because I heard my mother and I heard my father and I heard my cousins and my family and how they stood up and they talked, I channeled that information in myself, and I was able to use it,
Right.
To empower myself because I saw how they were. So I'm like, if they do it, I can do it too. So I think we just have to channel those moments in our life that make us feel empowered, that make us feel worthy, that we are somebody, that we're valuable, and that no one should be treating us the way that they're treating us because there's somebody that loves me.
Right.
There's someone that cares about me. There's someone that wants me to be somebody, and maybe you don't think that, but they do,
Right.
you know?
Yeah, no, I think that's really good advice too, because even for myself, even going back even further, I was a shy person. I wasn't a person that stood up for themselves, right? Because I never knew what that looked like. I never had a role model, right? And I think, being raised by my mom and my grandma, and not having my father in my picture, that also takes a big part as well. But I think it goes back to the value system part, right? In that moment for you, you was like, this is something I value.
Yes.
And I just really don't appreciate this.
Yes.
And it's that intuition for yourself that I know that I'm good enough. I know that I'm worthy enough, right? And that's looking at yourself. Like maybe there's some instances where like, oh, there's times I feel down, right?
Yeah,
but
of course.
when I'm down, that's when I can look up,
Yeah.
right? Because sometimes when we're up, we don't know how up we are. And I think in that moment, it's really be able to look at things and be like, if I'm able to do this, I can definitely empower others because I was the person to empower myself.
Exactly.
What was that thing that you thought about when it came to doing it for yourself and then thinking about others?
That's a great question. I think I was just tired. I think, I just got tired.
Right.
Of being someone's, person of objection,
Right.
that
Like a body bag.
like a body bag, that they were just always on me.
Right.
And I'm like, what did I do to
Right.
deserve this?
Right.
So I just decided to stop, like fully stop having people treat me any old type of way. And I had to show people on how to treat me as well, because it's one thing people stop treating you a certain way, but it's another way that you show people how to treat you.
Yeah. How you do that? Like,
exactly, right?
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Right.
I had to learn how to do that.
Right.
And it comes with boundaries. It comes with your personal space. It comes with, respecting you as an individual, and it's not in a mean way.
Right.
I think everyone thinks, well, I'm tired of so and so doing. Okay, fine, but there's a way that you say it, and there's a way that you show it. And they might not know that it's offensive to them, or it's offensive. It's offensive. Period. Right. So you just have to be more understanding and compassionate. And even for me, people had to correct me too. I'm not saying that I was always the one that correcting others.
Right.
People had to correct me.
Of course.
I think sometimes when people are very excited about opportunities or, topics or conversation, you want to jump right in and give your point of view, but someone's already talking.
Right.
So when someone's talking, you have to slow down, think first, and then let that person finish. You don't jump in.
Right.
So we all have these idiosyncrasies or these minutiae of our personality that are not bad, but we just have to channel them in the right way so that people can respect you more, right? And get to know you more, because what's going to happen is people are not going to get to know you because they're going to always focus on that one thing that irritates them,
Totally agree.
So we just have to, listen, okay? And, help people to, understand more about who you are, but then also listen to what they're saying about you. It might not all be good. It might not all be bad. It might not be all what you do, but there's some truth because they're feeling this.
Right.
And so sometimes you just have to, take a step back and listen.
Right.
And understand what people are saying or what they're saying that you said to them that they don't feel comfortable with. And we all have to do that no matter what spaces we're in. I've had to do that multiple times, because some people are more laid back and not very excited and stuff, and that's okay. So then I have to kind of match their energy. People talk about that. You have to match people's energy. Not that you're dubbing down on you, but you're respecting their space.
Right.
That's all.
It's almost like conversation is almost like going in a house, right? You knock on the door, sometimes they let you in, sometimes they don't. And when you get in, you see this, mindset that they have. And when you get into this mindset, you're understanding, oh, this is how things are put. Oh, this is where I should sit. Or this is where I walk, right? This is the traffic, right? When you go in a house, you see that things are laid out a certain way so you can know where to walk, where you place things, where you put your shoes, right? If you had to take off your shoes or not. And I think it's learning to also not only have your own boundaries, but knowing if they have any as well. And sometimes, like, just with that kind of conversation you have with someone allows you to really understand them, like we were saying, right? And that comes with like how they say things and what they say, right? A lot of times we hear, especially nowadays, is like, oh, it's not what you said,
Right.
it's how you said it. But we both agree that it's not only what you say, but also how you say it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I'm thinking about, I want to give a little scenario for our listeners, right? And I think there's a lot of
Sure.
factors when it comes to just
Yes.
having a a moment where, you know, we don't know how to address our boundaries, right?
Oh, yes.
So let's say in the instance, someone is giving you a certain nickname, right? And
Right.
it's something that really makes you comfortable, and you rather just say, just call me Ayanna, right?
Right.
So if someone's giving you a nickname, and let's say and you know it's me, and I'm saying hey, and I'm saying that nickname that's really
Right.
uncomfortable to you,
Right.
how would you address that in a moment where we're around other people?
That's a great question. It's a hard question.
Yeah.
Because especially if you're around other people, I kind of think about this. You need to pick your battles, right? Pick your battles, right? Sometimes, you know, after the event in public is over, you know, you might, you know, take those people aside and say, hey, listen, you know, I've noticed in the last couple of weeks you've been calling me this particular name. I just want to let you know, and I'm sure you don't know, but I don't particularly care for that, you know, especially when we're in public, right? You know, it's okay if we're like, you know, if we're friends and we're hanging out together, but when we're in a professional or public manner, I would prefer you not to use that word. Like, I get it. Like, we have this great relationship. We know each other. But in this setting, I would prefer you not to use that. I'm not saying you don't have to use it, but I would prefer you not to. That's just me, right? And hopefully they respect you because they're your friend or they're someone that you have a relationship with. And even if you don't have a relationship with them, you still need to let them know how you feel.
Right.
But don't make a big issue out of it in front of others, because what's going to happen is people are going to pick up on your energy, not what they said, because they're going to be like, oh, there's nothing wrong with that. They're going to pick up on your negativity. They're going to pick up on your impressions of it, and they might not want to be around you again, because they see that you're very sensitive or you're very judgy,
Right.
and people don't like to be around sensitive. Not to say they don't like to be around sensitive people,
Right.
but judgy people and people that are always critical or negative,
Right.
like
Or reactive.
or reactive, right? People don't want that. You know, you just want to, you know, easy breezy. Like,
Right.
let's easy. Let's, you know what I mean? Like, let's go with the flow.
Right.
Like, we're good. Like,
Yeah.
it's okay.
Yeah.
You know, but there have been moments for me that I've gotten words like sweetheart, oh my love, and I'm like, I don't even know you like that. Like, what do you like? Where did you get that? So it's their pleasantries or their, you know, words that they've probably grew up with and they've heard, and they want to sort of share that. So
Right.
you know, I'm okay with it to a certain extent.
Right.
You know, I don't make a big deal about it. For me,
Right.
you know, because I don't think it's coming from a place of
Maybe maliciousness or like
yeah,
manipulative or like trying to be negative about
right.
who you are and trying to impose.
Right. I don't see that happening, but you know, if it were, you know,
Right.
if it were, then I certainly would make sure that the person really understands my point of view, you
Right.
know, in a respectful way. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm not trying to, you know, you know, be angry about the situation. I just want you to know my thoughts about it.
Right.
Know, and that's it.
And I think that's really well put, that the way that you said it, because I think a lot of times people can be reactive, and I think that comes with a reflection of who you are, and that's okay. Like, being mindful that you are reactive is a big thing, right? That's the first step, like being aware, and then when you can be aware of something, you can change, right? And you know, being able to step away from someone because that's something a little bit more private, and then also being mindful that maybe there is some cultural background, maybe there is their upbringing, and knowing, like, maybe that's just something that they've been told, and they're just sharing that because that's their own pleasantries. I like the way that you mentioned that, and to be mindful, I'm like, hey, when you pull this person to the side, you mention a lot about me. Like, hey, I prefer. You say the I's in there. You say,
Exactly.
hey, this is just me saying,
Yes.
this has nothing to do with you.
Exactly.
I think sometimes when someone's trying to assert a boundary, they saying you,
Right. No.
as if it's your fault.
No.
But if you say, hey, this is me, this is I,
Right.
and this is who I am,
Right.
I would like you to address me for who I am and see me for who I am.
Exactly.
It makes a different approach rather than saying like, hey, I don't like that you do this. It's more of like, hey,
Exactly.
I
Right.
would like that you can be able to approach me in this way, right? Keywords, me and I, rather than you and do and all these other things. Because
Exactly.
people don't know.
Yeah, they don't, and I think you don't want to do that because that might be fine for somebody else.
Right.
Right? So they might be using that word or that term with someone else and they don't have a problem with it, right? And they could come back to you and say, "Well, I use this all the time and everyone is okay with it," you know? So again, it's not you, it's me.
Right.
You know,
Right.
so you have to be very clear that it's you that doesn't want this word for you.
Right.
Not that the word you're using has an issue, but it's just for me. I don't want it to be used. You
Right.
know, because you might say it to someone else and they might like, "Oh, I love that name. That's cute," or whatever.
Right.
Whatever they say, you know, and that's good, you know, and that's fine. But for me, I just prefer you not to use it.
Yeah, and I think that's a great word that you said the P word, prefer, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's a beautiful word because you're saying, hey, everybody has preferences, right? The same
Exactly.
way that we dress, the same
Exactly.
way that we step in a room, and if we're
Exactly.
charismatic or not, introvert, extrovert, there's a preference in that. There's a preference for what we eat, right? There's a preference of the people that we hang with, the things that we like
Exactly.
doing. So it's almost the same way. I prefer the words I like using, and I
Exactly.
prefer the words that are being used upon me, right?
Exactly.
Because then it goes back to the energy, right? How I'm
Exactly.
being portrayed. If you're calling me or saying that I'm this in any form of way, this says a lot about what other people may be seeing of me. And although I don't think you're doing this in a negative way, I
Right.
just wouldn't like that you use that. That's it. Right? And I love it because I think it's even going back to when you mentioned, like, I think a lot of people can take that, you know, when you set a boundary, it can be like you're coming off aggressive, you're being rude. But
Right.
it's not being rude, it's just saying, hey, like, I just don't like this, and that's it. And you see how everyone that's listening is like, I'm saying it like this, right?
Yeah.
I'm not coming off very aggressive. I'm like, yo, I don't like that you do this. Like, if I
Right.
change my voice like this and I'm sounding
Right.
like that, it sounds very cutthroat,
Exactly.
right? I don't want to talk like that.
Right.
But if I say, hey, you know, I really don't appreciate that you talk to me like this or call me these names, I understand that, you know, having a couple of pauses works too.
Exactly.
So yeah, no, I love that, and I think a lot of people need to really take in part of what that looks like. So that's why I wanted to make an example, because that was a perfect example, and the fact that she did that on the fly, right? I did not tell her about it.
She
I didn't.
did it.
I didn't say there was gonna be an example, and she just did it, right?
Right.
That says a lot. You know, when she was 60, she's from 16 years, right? Like from when she was 16 years old, she was able to improv, right? Like,
Yeah.
and that's really what it is, improvising.
Exactly. It was because I'm like, you know, because not that I saw violence all the time in my life, but you know, you watch TVs, you see stuff, you hear people getting beat up and everything, and I'm thinking to myself,
Wow. Yeah.
who wants to do that? Like I knew I had some other things I needed to take care of that day. You know, I had places to go, I had to go to work. You know, like I don't have that time to invest that type of energy into you, right?
Yes.
And you're not like you're not in my space to for that, right?
Right.
So I needed to really be clear on how I was going to manage her. You know, I knew that I was smart. I already knew that. And I knew that my words mattered. I already knew that. So I just needed to have that confidence
Right.
to come up and to do that. Because I could think it,
Right.
but I didn't verbalize it.
Right.
And there, at that moment, thinking and verbalizing met. And they were able to penetrate her so that she calmed down because she was ready to
Right.
fight me.
Right.
And she calmed down. I calmed down because I was getting a little bit, you know, my mind was like, okay, what if she hits me? Like, I'm thinking, like, what if she hits me? What am I going to do? Like, you know, and I said, no, you're just going to continue to talk through this. You're going to talk. You're going to talk her down. You're going to talk her down. Everything's going to work out. You're going to
Wow.
be fine. She's going to be fine. You're going to just talk through it. And that's what I did.
Wow.
And I don't remember like a lot of the interactions, but I do remember her saying something like, I never knew you. Like, I never knew you. I didn't know you were like this. And it wasn't negative, it was positive.
Right.
Like, she was trying to say, like, in our young way that, wow, I thought you were going to beat me up, or I thought you were going to fight me.
Right.
I didn't realize that you were just, you know, so it was like, I just recall something like her talking or saying something to me,
Wow.
you know, and she didn't and so it was kind of like, and it was almost like she like hung her head down and was like walking away like,
Wow.
wow, like what happened here?
Yeah.
You know, so it was, I just remember that like flashbacks of like thinking, like as we're talking right now, I'm thinking about it more clearly that I remember her doing that. And then the next day on the bus, she didn't bother me.
Wow.
Nobody bothered me.
Did she ever talk to you again?
That's a good question. I don't remember. I don't think so. because we had separate groups. You know how
Right.
kids, they're just with different groups of
Yeah.
girls or whatever. So
Yeah.
we were in different groups. So my group had heard, and so I
Mm.
became like this newfound like leader, you know.
Then that's what a leader is, right? Using your voice,
right,
lead.
right. And so it was crazy because then they're like, oh, we need to do this and this and that. Can you help us with this? So I became like the school leader, and I was part of like different clubs, and
Wow.
yeah, it was crazy. Like people were inviting me to different things.
Look at
Yeah.
that.
Like I became student of the month. Like even the
Wow.
teachers felt like I was somebody, you know.
Wow.
It like the trajectory of my life changed
Wow.
at that moment when I
Wow.
stood up for myself.
Right.
And so when people say, "Well, how did you become this?" I was not this. It was a pivotal time in my adolescence at 16, because prior to that, I took it. I
Yeah.
took all of it. You know, leading up elementary, middle school.
You got tired of it. It
Yeah.
was just like, enough is enough.
Enough is enough. So I had my pivotal moment in life where
Wow.
I changed the trajectory of my life. If I hadn't stood up to her, who knows
Right.
what I would be doing right now.
That is so true.
You know?
Wow. Like
Yeah.
that is, and I love that. And honestly, going back to what I mentioned already, you might have to write a book upon that because that's so amazing. I think that,
Right.
you know, to be able to have a testimonial, right? That what it is to really use your voice,
Yep,
right?
yep.
Because words have a lot of power, right?
Yep.
There's a frequency unto what you use, right?
Absolutely.
There's a literacy
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
allow you to put yourself in a position where people can see you and understand you with those kind of words, right? I think we use certain words nowadays in slangs that kind of take away from who we are or what we're trying to portray and hope that someone else is going to understand us. But if we can't even understand ourselves and we can't use those words, those tools, right? Because that's what words are. It's like a tool.
Absolutely.
Those blocks that make a building, that makes a house, right? And I think it's really about your experience has led you to where you are today, right?
Yeah.
You have a whole program with Take the Mic, right? And tell us about Take the Mic. Let's hear about it. What is this? What is Take the Mic?
Right. What is Take the Mic? So Take the Mic is a public speaking program for girls primarily. However, we do offer it to all youths, all genders. And what it is it's just to empower young girls to use their voice, whether it be in school, in their community, for advocacy of things that they're concerned about and they're passionate about, and to be confident enough to share their point of view, and that their voice and their point of view matters in the scheme of everything. More voices make for diversity, make
Yeah.
for equity, make for inclusion. And so it's so important that we use so many different voices.
Yeah, totally agree. I totally agree. And you know, it's like I love everything that is connected, right? And I always say that because it's where when we understand the communication piece, that's what allows us to build relationships,
Absolutely.
right? It's not only about problem solving; it's definitely about how do you build those relationships,
Yep.
and then you sustain those relationships, and then that even goes back to yourself,
Yes,
right?
yes.
How you talk to yourself, and I think that was a foundational piece for yourself. You was like, I'm tired of it, right?
Yep.
And you took that thought process,
Yes.
and you verbalized that,
Absolutely.
right? And I think also, would you say the way that you think about things might come off a little bit different than how you verbalize it? Like, I think sometimes we think about things negatively and we have our intrusive thoughts. Do you ever have those moments, and does it take you a long time to do that? And if so, what is that process like for you? Like, what is it that you do in order to actually articulate yourself?
That's a great question. So, they always say you're supposed to think 5 times or something like that before you speak, right? And you really should. Because your first inclination, your first thought sometimes might be a negative thought.
Right.
You might be speaking from an emotional space, right? You're not speaking from a factual space. In the work that I do, I can't speak from an emotional space. I really have to speak from a factual place, a place that people are going to hear me. Because if I'm getting up there and I'm emotional and I'm screaming and I'm yelling, no one's hearing me, right? So I have to think really hard with what words I use, how I choose my words, and when I say what I need to say. Because sometimes there isn't always a need to say anything. You let it go, and then you'll see the whisper or you'll see the flickering thing that you wanted to see change. it just sort of developed like a butterfly.
Right.
It already evolved, and you didn't have to do anything. Just wait it out for a minute. Wait, I think we need to wait this one out. Look, it's getting ready to change. It changed. I didn't even have to interject. I didn't even have to say anything. Because sometimes words and thoughts travel, and people get that sense from you,
Yep.
and they start to sort of level down, and
Yep.
they start to figure out, okay, I need to focus
Right.
themselves without
Yes.
you having to say anything, do anything. So I'm very conscious of my timing of when I talk. I'm very conscious of what I say, and I'm very conscious of who's in this space, who's in this room, you know, because people are ready to run and go say, oh, did you hear what she said? They're always ready to do that.
Right.
You know, so I have to be very conscious of who's in the room, what's getting ready to be said, and isn't important enough for me to put my viewpoint when someone else has already said it.
Right.
You know, they've already said what I was thinking, you know. So do I need to really say something else? No.
Right.
I need to sit here and be thankful that they said it and not me.
I just love it here. Like, what's going on? It's the words. It's the words. Yo, I love it. I totally am on board with everything you're saying.
Yeah.
It really makes me think about when I was younger. My mom, she used to always say there's a time and place for everything. And that is something that I've learned countless amounts of times the older I've gotten. And I love that you say that sometimes it's not about only what you say, how you say, but you said when you say it. And the fact that, you know, I've even experienced there's sometimes where not saying anything is saying something enough.
Exactly.
And being mindful that when you can have that timing on when to say something, right? Like for the example, maybe in a situation with the example we give, and maybe you don't pull them to the side. Maybe you talk to them another day that you see them. And with seeing them on that other day, you think about, okay, maybe this is the time. Or if someone's going through like a bad day, you kind of be like, hey, how's your doing? They'll be like, oh, it's an okay day. Maybe that's not the time to talk about it, right? Because we have to be mindful on how people are able to hold on to that, right?
Exactly.
How you got to be mindful of the receiving part, right? You can always give, but are they going to receive?
Right.
And even when you was mentioning too, like it makes me think about, you know, there's two kinds of people when it comes to speaking, and there's one person that has to say something, and there's someone that has something to say, right? Like everybody always feels like they have to say something,
Yes.
right? Oh, I have to say something because I don't want to look like this or I don't want to look like that.
Right.
But then there's the other portion where I have something to say, because in the instance where having to always say something,
Right.
like, oh, I have to say something, means that, oh, it doesn't matter what it is or what they say, I have to still use my voice and vocalize myself. But in the aspect where, like you mentioned, where
Yes.
maybe they said enough
Right.
to a point where maybe I don't need to say anything. And I think that's so crucial because nowadays we try to compete
Yes.
with people say.
Yeah.
Like if someone says something that was valuable,
Right.
you'll try, the other person might be like, oh yeah, I was thinking that too. Yeah, that was
Right.
dope. And it's like, it takes away from you more than it adds on to you. The more that you think about, oh, I want to take credit for what that person said, you can just say, you're right. Or I agree with that. I like that perspective. And just engage with that. And that's how you connect. Right. And I think the communication piece really comes with an emotional part as well. Like understanding, like, I may have a feeling to this, but what's really real about this right now? And I love that you say that the objective piece and the subjective piece, right? The emotional standpoint and knowing that I have to be more factual of what is. Is there a moment that you may feel maybe more emotional, and in that instant, what do you do in that moment, right? I think a lot of times people might be more reactive, and I think people don't know how to do that. Is that something where you take space? Like, what is your way of doing things when it comes to a moment where you're emotional?
Wow, that's a good question too. I think we all get emotional,
Right,
You know,
right.
we're not we're not, you know, beyond that, right?
Right.
I think for me, I have to recognize when something bothers me.
Right.
Right. I do have to know that, and I have to know what that is for me.
Right.
And so when I do get into that space where something bothers me or something irritates me, I can't address it at that moment.
Right.
Because whatever emotion is inside of me is going to come out. So I do have to do sort of a moment where I need to get to this later. I need to, work on something else. I need to focus on something else so I can calm myself down. Because I never address anything when I'm emotional or when I'm upset, or if I'm just irritated by something. I kind of just, let it subside for a while, and then I'll get back to it if it's important enough.
Right.
Because even if it's not that important, and it's something that's just for whatever reason I'm just in a box for that day, and I'm like, it should have gone this way, then I just have to let it go. Right? It's done. It's complete. It's okay. It might have not been the way I wanted it to be. And there are many times, and people know me, and I know they're probably listening to this part. We know how you are, and I am.
Right.
But I have to let that go.
Right.
Because not everybody is going to get the vision or the way that I want something to be done. And that's okay. Like, I have to let go of that. So last year was my big year of letting go of that. No, seriously, letting go of, it was supposed to be in a circle, now it's in a square. Okay, got it. But I want it in a circle, but it's in a square. Okay, I need to let go of that, right? But I was holding on. Like, no, it's supposed to be a square or whatever, circle, whatever.
Yeah.
But I had to let that go,
Right.
because that's taking too much energy. That's taking too much time. That's taking too much things away from the bigger picture, the work that needs to get done, right?
Right.
And so I have become more flexible in allowing the creativity of everybody involved to bring their authentic selves into what it is that we want to all do together.
Together forever.
Together forever. So it might be my idea, but someone else might have another vision or another reality of that particular idea. And so I have to be more receptive to that. So I did a lot of work on myself last year with regards to that.
Right.
But in terms of, getting emotional or getting in a space, again, just letting it subside for a while and not addressing it immediately, unless it's a dangerous situation.
Right.
Unless it's a safety issue, unless it's something like threatening, like life-threatening, I would have to address it immediately.
Right.
And really, be very clear on what the objective is, right? And that is to get someone to safety or to stop someone from doing something because you're harming somebody. Like, that is a totally different can of worms, right? But it still elicits emotion, right?
Right.
And so my emotion would be higher because now I can't deal with you right now because I got to deal with this.
Right.
Okay, I'm over here, and we have to be very clear on that. So I can switch up a little bit, especially for situations, because, people there might be a need for me to not just sit back idly by and watch something happen. I need to address it.
Right. No, I love that, especially the fact that you mentioned flexibility, right? I think when it comes to being in a certain room and you're learning, like, who's in that room, that those people in that room is a big determination on how you're going to address things, right? And even the way that you talk to them, right?
Yes.
Like, I always say that when you understand how people talk, you understand how to talk to them.
Exactly.
And the flexibility then makes me think about how adaptable you are, right? In certain situations, right? There's a situation when you were 16,
Yes.
the situations where, people may have called you certain names that you don't really feel comfortable about,
Yeah.
and learning when to address it and if it needs to be addressed.
Right. And
Totally agree.
And actually, as an adult, that happened to me, right? And so I was at a local grocery store. I won't share too much of the details.
Yeah.
But it was a situation where I heard something that someone directed to me. And so I wasn't going to stop. I wasn't not going to address it. And so I had to stop what I was doing and I had to address them. It was another adult that spoke to me in a very ill manner.
Right.
And I wasn't going to let that fly.
Right.
Not in this day and age. And I had never, as an adult, been in a situation like that before, where I had to stop everything I was doing to address another adult on how they spoke to me.
Right.
That was very uncomfortable. But I remembered that I'm empowered, that I can do this. Now, knowing that I had no clue on this person, who he was, or nothing, but the way that he spoke to me, it was just, I wasn't going to just let that go.
Right.
So there's some things in present time or in the moment that you might have to address, that you might not be able to just skip over it. or gloss over it, because the way in which he spoke to me was just uncalled for. I did nothing to deserve that.
Right. And I think, when you mention about like, I didn't do anything to deserve that, goes back to like, I know what I deserve.
Exactly.
I know who I am.
Exactly.
And I think when it comes to being able to address something, it's not necessarily, oh, well, I'm addressing it because, they said something. But the
Right.
adding on to that is also, well, if someone's talking me in this way,
Yeah.
what I let someone do and allow them to do, I'm choosing.
Yes.
And if I'm choosing for them to do that, that means I'm choosing that for myself.
Exactly.
Right? Because everything that's outside and external from you is yours, right? Like this is your experience. This is your world, right? Like as we are friends, right? I am your friend. So anything that is yours, you want to make sure that you take care of. And I think in that instance, you was in your environment. And since that person was in your environment, you have to address it. Because what happens is that there's energy that tries to identify who you are.
Yes.
And what you need to do is close it off and say, no, this is not what's going to happen. And this is what we should do about this, because I'm not going to let this happen. I'm not going to tolerate this, and I prefer this, right? And that's the key thing, right? Sometimes we can say we want this, like we were mentioning about the circle and the square.
Yeah.
We want this, but
Yeah.
what we should be doing is being like, this is what I would like, and this is why I would like this, or
Exactly.
better. Right. And that comes a lot when it comes to communication, addressing yourself, uncomfortability, and all these other things. But this is what allows us to identify ourselves, have boundaries, and allow us to be able to build relationships that are sustainable and respectable.
Exactly.
Yes. Enough said. Enough said.
I was going to say, enough said.
Yeah. I definitely would love to go into our next segment. Right.
Sure.
This is a segment that I've actually started with a couple people that has come on the guest, and I'm so
Sure.
excited to do with this with you because
Yes.
we're all about words.
Yes, all
right?
about words. Literacy. Words matter.
I love it. Guys, you have no idea how much I love words. You have no idea. So the segment is called Rally Rapid.
Ooh.
And Rally Rapid is where I give you 10 words.
Oh my goodness.
And with these 10 words, you're going to tell me the first word that comes to your mind.
Okay.
You ready?
Okay.
Let's do it.
Okay.
So the first word I have here for you is family.
Sarah, Kamal, Kyron, Chaz, mom, dad, cousins, nieces, nephews. Yes.
Shouts to family. Family. Second word is wellness.
Exercise, eating healthy, loving myself, being kind to myself, giving myself grace.
Yes. Third word, communication.
Speaking, using my voice to empower others, to encourage others, to inspire others, to motivate others, and to be uniquely me.
Just love this. Fourth one is secure.
Having safety in my home, in my community, with my friends, with my family, with my surroundings, with my job.
All around, all around. The fifth one is spirituality.
Prayer, fasting, reading my holy books, and meditating, and being kind to the earth.
Absolutely. The sixth one is love.
Family, myself, my earth, my environment, my community.
Nice. 7, abundance.
Riches, what God has for me. Love, light, family, health, finances.
I love that. It's so true. 8th is liberation.
Free. Being me, being authentically me, not worrying about others and what they think of me, but being my true, authentic self.
Totally agree. 9 is loyalty.
To those that are loyal to me, those that stand up for me, those that fight for me, those that stick their neck out for me.
The standing up part, I love it. And then the last one is leadership.
Being in my authentic self, taking on leadership, espousing leadership, helping others become leaders, being a balanced and kind leader, being firm and dedicated, committed, and ever, ever learning.
I love it. I love it. Everybody, the calm and collective Ayanna Crawford. You know, this was such a refreshing moment. And as many times as we see each other in the community, I think this is the first time we really sit down and really just talk about what really matters, right?
Yes.
Like really getting to know each other. And like, I love the background of your story when, you know, you was 16 and you actually stood up for yourself and you used that with words. And, you know, I wish that, you know, when I was a lot younger, I had more of that understanding, right? And be able to stand up for myself. And I've learned it now, and that's something that we still continue to learn. But I think it's so beautiful to have someone like yourself to really use that word and to be able to have Talk the Mic and have the platform to empower other youth and use their voice, because that's really what it matters, right?
Exactly.
Words have a lot of power, just like stars do. And energy is a big
Ooh.
thing. And I think that, you know, it's just awesome to have you in this community. It's awesome to have you in this space. And I want to also allow you, if there's anything you want to let our audience know that's coming up for you, where they can find you, and how we can just be involved in everything you do.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much to the audience, and thank you so much for having me. We have a wonderful event that we're starting. It's a new initiative through Take the Mic. We're calling it Take the Mic Cafe and Vendor Fair. We want to build a capacity level where we support not entrepreneurs, businesses, and vendors to come to our location at 640 Page Boulevard to showcase their businesses, showcase their wares, showcase their information about their business or an organization that they're a part of. So this is once a month. The first one is March 22nd from 1 to 5. And we also are incorporating what we're calling a cafe, where we are going to have our youth from our program sell sandwiches, fruit, water, lemonades, and just an opportunity for them to become entrepreneurs. So we're calling it the Take the Mic Cafe, and we're going to have it actually the whole year, but we're launching it on March 22nd at the vendor fair. Again, 640 Page Boulevard. You can find us on Facebook at Take the Mic. You can find me on Facebook, Ayanna Crawford, and also we are creating a In the Culture community calendar, where we will be hosting a calendar for the entire community. So if you have a community event or something you need to share, send it to me via Facebook, Messenger, whichever, and we will put that in the calendar. It's going to be a website we're creating.
Nice.
And you'll have an opportunity to become a member or just become what we call a spectator. And you can cruise or the website itself. And what else? And we've got a lot of other great things coming up in the future.
Yes.
But until then, feel free to follow me on Facebook, Instagram. I'm on Twitter. Yeah.
I love it. Everybody, Ayanna Crawford. Yes. Make sure you keep up with what she does, and if you guys are not subscribed to the channel, if it's Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, even if it's on YouTube, make sure you subscribe, right? Because we have awesome guests such as Ayanna here, and there's gonna be plenty more guests to come on, and I'm just so excited for more to come. And until next time, you guys be easy. Peace.